Welcome to the Room of Lives. I'm your host, Neil. Today I spoke with Ian. Over time, Ian had become manic, feeling like a philosopher who had figured out life. Then he did some LSD and weed and became trapped in insanity for several months. First seeing himself to be a Christ-like Messiah, then not feeling like a person anymore. At times, he believed that he would stay crazy forever. Here he describes those episodes, how he made it back, and his current outlook on himself and on drugs.
Am I being recorded right now?
Yeah, we're both being recorded.
Oh, okay, cool.
And the CIA are listening like real time.
Oh, well, that's always the case. Anytime I have my phone on me, you know I'm on those watch lists. All right, cool. So
before you had this episode, what was generally like your drug use history experience?
Nothing. I got drunk one time ever in my life, for the first time when I was 17. I started smoking weed when I was 17. And then I was just like pretty much a full-time stoner for like 2 years. And then I started getting manic at some point in when I was 19 or maybe 18. And then when I was manic, I did acid, and then it was I was going to say a downhill slope, but it was more of a roller coaster all over the place.
Can you describe just being manic first, like before the LSD? What does that mean when you say that?
Yeah, I guess it was sort of a slow build-up where at first I was like, whatchamacallit, I like thought that I had like figured out life. Like I had a ton of energy. I was sleeping like 5 or 6 hours max, usually less, and just still had time for everything. And I was like, at the time I didn't have a job. I was just like being a do-nothing at home. But I was like, wow, like I can do anything. And I got like a job at Whole Foods and was like way too like outgoing, like not like my own self. And I had like this idea that I was coming up with a philosophy or something that I couldn't even tell you about now because I don't really remember it because it was kind of like...
You never wrote it down?
I did write a bunch of stuff when I was manic, but it didn't make any sense. And like after like my episode was over, I sort of deleted a lot of it and stuff.
But
it was all
philosophy
incomprehensible.
was like a philosophy of life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that I'd like found the meaning of life and figured it all out. But I definitely had it. It was gobbledygook. Like reading it later is just gibberish. Didn't really make
there
sense.
were words in it?
Oh yeah,
English words.
Yeah, like
were they strung together into sentences?
There were. I really couldn't tell you any of it. My memory of that period is kind of weird. It was like the sort of thing where like I was so suggestible that anything could be part of it. Like I'm trying to think of a good example.
Like some kind of a grand vision.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all coming together very meaningfully.
Yes.
And somehow you're kind of near or at the center of it.
Yes, definitely. I wasn't like, until I did acid, I didn't feel like I was like a Christ-like figure or anything. But before I did acid, I definitely felt like a philosopher, like a man of history, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like significant. But, yeah, none of it really made any sense. And I really wasn't and still am not like well read enough to make any sort of contribution to like intellectual thought, but I really felt like I was onto something. That was a phrase I used a lot. So I'd be like, I'm onto something, you know?
The universe started making more sense.
Yeah, or just like living did. Like my like place in the universe is being like, all I have to do is just do stuff, and if I do stuff, things are fine. Like, yeah, it was felt very meaningful, but was like completely incomprehensible, meaningless.
What you just said
Excuse me.
Did not seem meaningless to me.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I guess it wasn't like meaningless. It was just like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. I definitely felt like it was more unique to me than it was. Like, I thought that I was some genius who'd come up with it, and I thought that it was very, like, self-aggrandized, and it wasn't, like, anything that, you know, like, the sort of shit I was coming up with was stuff that people had either written about or was, like, stuff that, you know, like, teenagers have, like, whoa, mind blown, like, we're all so small type shit, you know what I mean? Which is, like, significant stuff, but not, like, anything to you know, lose it over.
Yeah, but I guess that's what happens is in that psychological condition, the amount of significance that we feel kind of amplifies.
For sure, yeah.
So your thoughts and feelings seem more significant. What's happening around you in your life feels more significant, I guess.
Yeah.
There is some dial in the brain that determines how significant we find everything. And if that dial is turned down all the way to 0, you're like depressed. Like nothing means anything.
Yeah.
And you can have it at medium where like, oh, it's significant, this is important, that's not. And you can have it turned more where everything feels like suffused with significance.
Yeah. That's where I was at. I felt like everything connected into this like idea that I'd had about how the universe worked. But I couldn't really put into words. Yeah, I wanted to like write I think I like started writing an autobiography when I was like 19, which is really stupid. And shit like that. Like I was like, I've got this all figured out. And I'm gonna write it down and change the world.
I'm not entirely sure that you were wrong.
Well, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like I lost it now. Like a lot of it, I don't know. I'm trying to, I wish I had specifics, but I really did delete a lot of it and like sort of purge it from my mind because it was sort of a bad time in my life overall.
Yeah, it was associated with other negative things that happened.
Yeah, and also like something I think about a lot was like I was super lucky that I was able to have like an episode and just sort of be okay. Like I had a mom who I could live with and like paid for everything and shit. Like if I had just been, you know, like I have friends who don't like talk to their parents who just like if they had had that sort of mental episode, which I think was sort of brought upon by like smoking weed, like they would have been fucked. Like they could have ended up homeless or something.
Yeah.
Whereas I had a place to sort of like, you know,
yeah,
like a rumpus room to just sort of like go crazy for a bit and then then get better.
Yeah.
You know?
So tell me about the episode. How did it start? What happened?
So I guess like I was already manic to the point where like my friends were starting to say like, we're kind of worried about you, like you're acting differently, whatever. Just in like my speech and stuff. Like I've always been sort of an excitable, talkative dude, but it had gotten to the point where it was like weird, I guess, for people and for my family. And then I had done acid like once. I don't remember where it was on the timeline, but I got like too low of a dose or something went wrong. And I just like threw up a bunch at the beginning and then just like sort of tripped. I like had microdosed by accident basically. But then I had decided I was going to like actually trip with my friend, and the plan was like in a couple days I was like gonna go over to his house or whatever, and then I was already, you know, manic as shit and like smoking weed constantly, and then the day before it was happening, and like this is true of anything in my life still, like if I'm excited for something I can't sleep. And I had told myself I wouldn't do it like if I didn't get any sleep, because I think, you know, having the right setting is important and all that. And then I didn't sleep, but because I was manic, I guess, or just because I'm stupid, I was like, whatever, I'm just going to do it anyway. Like, my attitude's right, so it'll be fine. Which, you know, was true. But yeah, and then I did acid at his house, and it was, you know, beautiful.
Wait, whose house again?
My friend.
Your friend.
We'll call him, Joe. That's
Joe,
not his name.
And had Joe done LSD?
Yeah, he'd done it before. He had done it. The first time he'd ever done it before was with me that time when it didn't really work out, when it didn't work for me, but it worked fine for him, and he was tripping balls and had a great time.
Okay.
And then since then, he'd done it like a couple times with his sister and stuff like that. So he had some experience.
How old were you again when you did this?
19.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, I had a great time, and I was like, I remember walking around his house feeling like fucking, like how I'd been feeling in the upcoming months of like being sort of manic, but like times a million, where I felt like my brain was like this conduit for fucking the universe and shit. And like, you know, and like all the normal acid stuff that people talk about, like sort of feeling time non-linearly, and like,
I think all those things are true. Like your brain is a conduit for the universe.
Yeah.
All our brains are.
And it was all that, for sure. It was like, it was definitely like the sort of run-of-the-mill, I don't know if run-of-the-mill is the right word, but it was like, the acid experience people talk about, which was great. And I still think that acid's good and people should do it, just not just all people. And then, I don't know, so like, acid was great, whatever. I, just listened to music and cried and stuff, and it was awesome. And then, like, I've been up for probably at least 24 hours. And, I had people tell me, like, don't smoke weed when you're on acid because it'll, like, make it more intense or whatever. Or people telling me, like, if you smoke weed all the time and you smoke weed on acid, it's not a big deal, which I was smoking weed all the time at that point. So I was like, I'd been, it was sort of wearing off and I wanted it to keep going. And I'd been up for somewhere between 24 and, like, 36 hours. And I was like, okay, I'll smoke weed. And then as soon as I, like, hit the bong, I, like, felt like a window pane just went between my brain and, like, the outside world. And then, yeah. And that was pretty much it. And then suddenly it, like, wasn't very fun anymore. I just felt like nothing was real and everything was shitty. It was like, people talk about, like, depersonalization. Like, it was that sort of thing.
Wait, what is depersonalization?
It's like I don't know how to even describe it. It's just like, it's like nothing feels real. You're totally dissociated.
Yeah.
Like, you don't feel like anything you're saying is actually you saying it.
Yeah.
It sort of feels like you're watching your life happen, which I know is, like, how people describe life. Sometimes, like, people get dissociated and whatever, but it's like, I don't know, it's sort of like the difference between, like, being wet and being, like, at the bottom of the ocean. You know what I mean?
In some spiritual paths, this is a state that's sought after.
Yeah. I don't know, it's pretty hellish. And didn't really, like, well, but as soon as the acid wore off, I was sort of, like, fine. Like, not fine. That's when I, like, went really crazy. Like, acid had worn off, and then I started to, like, just really be, like, off the deep end, like, thinking insane shit. Nothing, like, dangerous, luckily. Like, I didn't think I was being, like, gang stalked or anything like that. But I thought that, like, I thought I could play piano. I don't play any instruments, but I was like, I need to fucking buy a piano because I know how to play piano and whatever. And I was like, I don't know. It was really wild. Like, it's sort of hard.
Did you buy the piano?
No. I had plans to, but I never did.
Maybe you would have found out that you don't.
Yeah. Well, a lot of stuff would happen where, like, I would think, like, I know how to do this now, and then I would find out that I didn't. Like, one, like, sort of mundane example was I was, like, trying to pause a movie at the exact right moment. I was like, I got this. I'll do this first try. And I was, like, so convinced that I would for some reason, and then I didn't. And it was like my faith was shaken for a moment. I don't know. I'm trying to think of examples of how crazy I was. Because I was just fucking crazy. I mean, like, my mom has said that it was the worst time in her life because she thought that I was just gone. Like, she thought my brain was just completely fried and just over with. I don't know. I would, like, think that I was hearing voices, but really I was just, like, fooling myself into thinking my inner monologue was voices and shit like that. And, I got, like, word salad is? Like, have you ever heard that term? You just, like, can't put sentences together correctly. Like, sometimes I would just have word salad and I couldn't talk right. Yeah. What else? And I was still, like, very much convinced, like, I am the next stage in human evolution. Like, it had gone from, like, when I was just smoking weed or whatever, I was like, wow, I'm so smart. Like, I'm such a smart cookie. I'm gonna write a book or something and everyone's gonna love me. To, like, post-acid, I was like, I am God. Like, I have figured it all out and I will fucking,
Wait, did you actually feel like you're God?
Yeah, kinda. In, like, well, I sort of had a...
Like, at the head of creation, like, you remembered, oh, I've created this, or something like that?
Not like that. More like the whole, like, Christ-like figure thing where I was like, I have a message that the whole world must hear, and, like, I know the answers to the universe and whatever. Which, I don't think any individual has that. Or I think every individual does equally, I guess would be a better way to say it. But I felt like I had, like, tapped into this sense of like what being is from like an individual consciousness perspective, but I felt like it was like me, and for some reason like my consciousness was like the one that had to be the
that's the contrast that I'm finding hard to wrap my mind around, because on the one hand there's extreme depersonalization.
Yes.
Things are just happening.
Well,
and on the other hand, there's this philosophy that's centered around the me.
At this point, the depersonalization had sort of worn off.
Okay.
So that was like when I smoked weed, and then like that sort of wore off, and then I was self-obsessed. And then months go by, the like crazy manic beliefs wear off, and then I'm like back to sane, and then I don't know how many months went by then, or like how much time went by, but then I was like, I'm going to try smoking weed again. And then I smoked weed, and then I was completely like sane. Like I wasn't saying anything crazy or believing anything crazy, but I was totally like depersonalized and whatever, just for months on end, like had no emotions, couldn't do anything. So I sort of had like 3 separate distinct episodes, I guess you could say. Like,
tell me a little bit more about this depersonalization phase, where you were not doing anything crazy, but you were not feeling like you are a person, or...
Yeah, so that was, I think, just like my brain had like felt extreme panic and anxiety from the weed when I'd been up and smoked acid or something. And so as soon as I like tried to smoke weed again, it like just shut me down and like made me panic again. Like I had like built-in trauma with like cannabinoid receptors or something. I don't know. I'm not a neuroscientist, but like something along those lines, where just like I can't have THC because my brain will just like go into panic mode, and like I guess it's like a defense response of being like, you know, reality's too hard to confront, so it like your brain tries to convince you that nothing is actually happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you could somehow get back that sense of like meaning, philosophy, understanding of the universe, would you?
No, I feel like it was pretty vapid. Like, I don't think it really...
It was hollow. There was nothing actually...
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I felt like any of it was like... Well, honestly, it's hard to remember any of it because it was all pretty unspecific at the time. Like, it was pretty, you know, paint by numbers philosophy. Like, you know, like shit that you would see on like, I don't know. Like, just very basic, you know, what people say when they're on acid. Quotes. Yeah, like, why can't we all just get along? Or, like, we just need to do something different. Like, it was that sort of shit.
Yeah.
So I feel like I still have everything from that. I just don't think that it's, like, that it makes me a genius anymore.
Yeah. But I feel like there can be a difference between just saying those sentences that's so often repeated and really being in a place of consciousness where you totally feel like, why is that the truth?
Totally. I agree with that for sure. But I don't think that I would go back to that place if I could, because though it did feel fucking great, it wasn't really useful. And I think the word useful is sort of like kind of, you know, I don't want to mean like useful in capitalism or useful in like being productive or whatever under any system. Like, that's not what I mean by useful. I mean, like, it wasn't really good for me, like, interpersonally, or just like existing even on my own. Like, it was affecting my ability to like fucking make myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and eat it, because I was so like mind blown all the time that, you know, it wasn't like you know, it wasn't a good place to be, I guess.
So what happened to the logistics of your life, like, and your relationships?
I mean, luckily, I don't know why I was so lucky. Like, I didn't get on social media and say anything dumb. I didn't like really broadcast it much. I just like lived with my mom and my sister and her girlfriend at the time, my mom's girlfriend at the time, and pretty much just like, I guess it was around a month or maybe less than a month when I was like really, really crazy. And I just sort of fucking hung around all day and like watched TV and did nothing. Like, pretty much normal. Like, if I say the word NEET, do you know what that means? Like, NEET?
NEET.
Yeah.
No.
It means like not employed in education or training. So it's like whenever someone has nothing going on, they're a NEET. And that's what I was pretty much doing. I was just being a NEET, not doing anything. Just like watching YouTube and shit. I think I watched the this series on YouTube called Freeman's Mind, which is just like watching video games. But then I would like, while I was watching it, like be thinking about shit and not really paying attention. But yeah, so I pretty much just did that for a while and like ate. I don't remember what I ate. I remember how I got food. Probably my mom made shit, or I ordered Jimmy John's, or who fucking knows. But yeah, that's pretty much that. But luckily it didn't like affect my relationships with my friends that much. Like they'd sort of seen that something was happening and they didn't really like, they were like worried about you. And then the whole thing happened and I just sort of went radio silent, which wasn't like too unusual for me. Like sometimes I just keep to myself. So I don't know. I really dodged a bullet. Like I didn't make a spectacle of myself, which I really could have. Like, and I came very close to doing. But I think because I had already been like off of social media for a minute and all this stuff, like I didn't like have a public manic episode, which is nice. I definitely feel bad for, like, I'll see people acting up now and be like, oh god, it looks like they're manic. Like that sucks that they're that they're putting it out there. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know. So I had some friends who like remembered my early manic stages, and my friend Joe, who was like with me at the time, who like, you know, saw it sort of unfold. But like it pretty much, the storm passed and things were back to normal eventually, I think, you know?
Yeah. And so now you just don't do any drugs, or you don't smoke anymore either. I don't
smoke weed. I did shrooms one time, and I think because I was anxious about it because of my previous experiences, and it was like years after the episodes happened, I had like a bad trip on shrooms just because I was anxious about it. But I felt great for like a week afterward. Shrooms didn't really like fuck with me. And I still do like random drugs every once in a while.
Yeah.
But mostly I just drink, and then, I don't know, like I took Xanax a few times and shit like that. But I think, you know, I'm still very much pro acid and pro like psychedelics in general. And maybe acid just because of the nature of how acid is, and just like uppers. I haven't really done a lot of uppers other than acid. Like maybe just doesn't interact with manic people very well. Yeah, I would say like by and large I just drink, and that's about it. And caffeine.
Yeah. So it's like your self-importance went up a lot during that episode. And how would you say is your self-esteem now following that episode?
Like normal, you know? Maybe like where it was before. Like, I don't know. I think I'm in that self-esteem that like a lot of people have, or like sometimes... I mean, and this isn't like anything like atypical, but you know, people are like sometimes like, I'm the best, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I suck. Like, you know, just normal self-esteem. Okay, nothing really remarkable.
Because I was just thinking, if you had such a negative association between this feeling of self-importance and at the same time just like being crazy, and that you might now think that that's just like a bad thing.
Oh, no. I mean, I do sometimes like, well, I mean, I'm not like, I wouldn't call myself a narcissistic person, but you know, like I do like performing and like shit like that. Like I've been an attention-seeking person. So that like, I think that type of person has sort of a fluctuating self-esteem depending upon like whether they're getting attention or not. But as far as like that episode affecting it, I don't think it has at all.
It feels like you're able to talk about your own psychology as if you're not attached to it.
Yeah, I've had a lot of time to reflect on it, and I've gone to therapy and shit.
Wow.
All that jazz. I did for a while, and I'm sort of only getting over this in the past like year, but I would like get excited about shit and then like be like, oh my god, like am I about to be manic again? Like, oh no. Because the first time it sort of snuck up on me because it had never happened to me before. But I'm sort of over that now, just because like I've always been like a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kind of guy who's like, you know, up and about and shit.
What did you just say?
Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed.
Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of a rare like idiom, but it means like peppy, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I've always just been an excited kind of person.
Yeah.
So, but for a little while I was like, oh no, like I'm excited about something. Oh, I've been fucking hyper all day. Like, what if I'm gonna be manic? But I'm not really worried about that anymore. Like, it's been what, like almost 5 years since I had an episode. So, and it was like a singular event. So I'm sort of no longer anxious that it'll happen again. For a long time, I was like, my main focus was like, make sure I don't get manic again. Like, but now I'm sort of chilling.
Nice. Yeah, remember what I said earlier is that, so I want to get into this field of psychedelics, and I think it's kind of coming back in the US, and, you know, it always brings like a lot of promise. And what happened in the 60s and 70s was that people got too evangelical about it and too careless and too like euphoric.
Yeah, Timothy Leary was a big part of that for sure.
And that was not the only reason, but the government kind of had like a reaction to that.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it would be great to not have that happen again and actually play well with the government and just take more measured steps, because it matters that more people get to have the benefits. So I feel like it's important for someone like me to start on a very like neutral perspectives, and also hear like real stories about the cases where like psychedelic drugs are not a good idea.
Yeah, and I mean overall, I would say I'm very much pro psychedelics, and I feel like the government, like the whole, like, you know, like the MK Ultra experiments and whatever, like sort of they sort of lost interest in psychedelics, and they realized like they're not
really militarizable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, I'm sure it would suck if you gave someone acid and then, like, put them in Gitmo, but, like...
Put them in what?
Gitmo, like Guantanamo Bay. Like, I'm sure that would suck on acid, but, like, it would suck anyway. Yeah. Like, you know, it's not really, like, a truth serum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it is interesting that, like, MDMA has been shown to be very useful in, like, treating trauma. And, like, especially in, like, veterans and stuff. And I was thinking about this like last week, and I was like, I hope that we find ways to like treat trauma better, but I hope that like the government doesn't see that as a way like, oh, well, now we can make soldiers do things that might be much more traumatizing to them because we know how to fix it afterward and re-ingratiate them.
That's a wow. Yeah.
But
I think that's a real concern.
But at the same time, like, they already, you know, they're already having people do fucked up shit anyway, so...
Yeah, but, you know, just because it's anyway doesn't mean that it becomes further, like, more efficient to be doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Man, that's... Yeah, the commodification of certain things.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad that, you know, it's like, we can't have anything nice.
Actually, so UT just announced the launch of a psychedelics research center.
Okay.
And when I found out about it, I wrote to its director saying, I'm about to finish up my PhD. I want to do research on psychedelics. What have you got going on? Do you think I can be a postdoc? And he was like, I'm interested. This is what we are working on. What are they working on? They are working on the widows of veterans who died in combat.
Oh.
And these widows have prolonged grief.
Yeah.
And they want to give these women some psychedelics to see how it helps them overcome the prolonged grief. And I remember that as I started reading about this project, I was like, I don't like this project so much. Because it comes back to what you were saying. It's like, there are certain things that has happened, like war, very aggressive and violent things.
Yeah.
And I understand that, you know, losing a person is bad, but this person also killed a bunch of other people somewhere else. And there is an emotional and psychological toll of those things. And now if you use psychedelics to, I don't know, circumvent some...
It is one of those things... Well, I guess this is tangential, but I do always think it's strange... At least in American culture, I don't know if other cultures are like this, but there's like a thing in American culture, like when a cop dies or when a soldier dies, it's seen as like almost a greater tragedy than just when like a random person dies in a car wreck, which always seems strange to me because like they signed up to die, you know what I mean? Like they signed up ostensibly with like the knowledge that they're like putting themselves in harm's way. So it's always weird to me that, like, those people are given, like, way more support for that sort of stuff. Like, I don't know, like, there's got to be extreme grief. I've been, like, incredibly lucky not to have much random death in my family. knock on wood.
Mm.
But, like, I don't know. Like, why not just widows and widowers of, like, spouses who've died? Like, how is it more traumatic to have, somebody who's out there, shooting 15-year-olds who had AKs or whatever?
Mm.
Or, like, your husband getting brain cancer or something. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
Or dying in a random car wreck, which happens, like, so often.
I did decide, though, that if I am to do something about that project,
Mm-hmm.
I have to, like, kind of learn to, like, set my judgments aside.
Totally. And I mean, I'm not trying to
it might
say
be that
it's-
actually meeting them, like, opens my worldview up.
I'm sure that it's horrible. Like, I'm sure, I don't want to sound heartless. Like, I'm sure it's horribly traumatizing and sucks. And I'm not saying that they don't deserve support, and that they don't, deserve to, like, feel better from that trauma. I just think it's unfortunate that, like, what gets funded is always military-related stuff.
Yeah.
Especially with something like psychedelics, which I feel like, like, so much of the research has been in specific regards to, like, PTSD, like, from the military and stuff like that. And I'm speaking out of my ass. Like, I don't know, I studied general studies, liberal arts at community college. Like, I'm not an expert at this at all. But, just, like, from my layman's understanding. I think it's I wish that everybody had more access to psychedelic therapy, because people from all backgrounds are experience trauma for sure.
What are your, like, ambitions in life now?
I want to write at a video game company. I want to write video games.
You want to write? Oh.
Yeah.
Design video games.
Yeah, like write the dialogue
script
and the story and the shit. Like, yeah.
That's like a very specific.
Yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to do for a while, and everyone I know who has a job that they like ended up there, like, randomly, and wasn't really planning for it, but they had a direction they were heading, so that's...
You're talking about this video game company? Or...
I'm just talking about, like, my friends in general.
Your
like,
friends.
My friends who are, like, IT people, or, like, work at, like... I know someone who works at a mushroom farm, like, not, like, a mushroom, like, a fun mushroom farm, but, like, like, healthy mushrooms, like, not psychedelic mushrooms. But shit like that. Like, everyone I know who has, like, a cool job, they just sort of ended up there. But they, like, had a heading in mind. So my, like, direction I'm going is, like, I'm trying to learn how to write video games, trying to go into that industry. If I end up doing something else, c'est la vie. But for a long time, I was just doing nothing.
If you were to see someone having an episode like you did, and, like, you were a friend or something, what would you say or do? Or
I've had that happen, actually. When I was a waiter, I had a coworker who was, like, started, like, almost exactly the same sort of attitude that I had, but he had, like, his own version of it. But he was, like, smoking a lot of weed, but just, like, his personality just, like, changed and started acting different, like, sort of in the same way that I had. Just sort of, like, overly talkative, making neurological connections that didn't really make sense, like, assigning too much significance to things. And that's when I was 20. It was, like, pretty fresh, maybe 21. And so when that happened, I was, like... I was shut down. I didn't really know what to do. I think I had said to him, like, hey, dude, maybe you shouldn't smoke weed. Like, I didn't really know what to do. He wasn't, like, a close friend. He was just, like, one of my favorite coworkers sort of situation. And then more recently, and I'll have to really anonymize this, but, like, someone, like, a family friend was having an episode, and she's, like, an older person. So that's, like, when I was 20, I was like, I have no fucking idea what to do about this and whatever. And then he sort of, like, disappeared, and I don't know what he was up to. I think he wanted to be, like, a rapper. I heard, wasn't very good rap music. A lot of people, like, make not so good rap music, but he went from, like, had no interest to, like, now he's manic, and now he's like, I'm a rapper now. And it's hard to explain. Like, he was so, like, textbook DSM, like, mania. Almost, like, it reminded me, I think at the time it was, like, I was still too traumatized about my experience, and so I, like, was sort of scared of it. And then more recently, I, like, talked to this family friend who was having the episode, and, just sort of talked to her on the phone for, like, an hour and a half or so. And it was interesting. It was like she was having the same symptoms that I did, but I sort of like, as an untrained, unprofessional person, like I didn't really know what to do. Although one thing that I did feel was helpful is she kept saying, like, did you feel like it was going to go on forever? Like, did you feel like you were going to be crazy forever? And I was like, yes, of course I felt like I was going to be crazy forever. Like, you just feel like it's going to be crazy forever. Like, you know, it's hard to imagine an end to something whenever you're in it.
Yeah, because your mind at that time is that, so it cannot support all kinds of thought.
Exactly. How do you, like, you can't, it's like it's like eating a pepper and trying to think about ice cream really hard so that it tastes like ice cream. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Nice. That's a good analogy. When it felt like you were going to be crazy forever, you had some understanding of what being crazy is. Like, you're not thinking, I'm saying everyone else is crazy or something like that. You're like, I'm crazy and this is going to go forever.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know, dude. It was weird. Like, whenever I was, like, manic before, like, pre-acid, I didn't realize I was, like, I don't think I was really insane. I was maybe a little insane. And then once post-acid, when I was, like, full-on, like, nutso for a minute, like, I don't even know what I thought. I probably thought sometimes I was like, everyone else is crazy. Sometimes I would be, like, panicking, and I would think, like, oh, my God, I'm stuck like this forever. And sometimes I'd be like, this is what reality is. I don't know. That was, like, it was insanity. It's sort of hard to even, not in, like, a I'm so traumatized way, but just in, like, a, like, it's, like, my brain can't even process it way. Like, it's hard to even remember shit from that period, just because it was, like, so different. It sort of feels like having someone else's memories in my head. Like, it's just, like, not, like, my personality was different, my shit was all fucked, to put it academically.
Oh yeah. So there were this times in which you were just in, like, panicking and thinking, this is going to go on forever.
Oh yeah.
And forever means basically like the rest of your life until you physically die. You're just going to be. Did it feel like that was a life worth living?
God, I had a lot of perspectives on it. I don't think I ever wanted to kill myself during, like, the manic episode. Yeah. When I, like, later on smoked weed and I was, like, depersonalized, I, like, didn't really want to be alive, but also, like, the idea of, like, killing myself was, like, not really on the table either. But no, I've never been especially suicidal, I don't think. I don't know. I had, like, a lot of fucking weird thoughts about it, like, when I was, like, crazy, where I was, like...
What?
Well, I don't know. I think the whole time I did think it was kind of a life worth living, because I was convinced that I was going to, like, do something amazing. When I was panicking and, like, in those moments where I would, like, sort of come down for a bit and be like, oh my God, like, I'm crazy, like, what's going on? It was sort of like a... it's like a cornered animal. Like, I was like, felt like I was consumed with fear more than, like, sadness. Like, I wasn't, like... Like, if I had been horribly depressed, then maybe I'd be, like, killing myself to escape. But it was more like, what's going on? Like, you don't see, like, a gazelle get chased by a cheetah and, like, kill itself. Because the whole point is, like, it doesn't want to die. So, I don't know. I was sort of, like, panicking and, like... I don't know. But it would come in waves. So it would be, like, I don't know. It's really, like... I'm trying to be as precise as I can with it, but it's very hard to, like, remember that stage in my life.
I feel like I might be in a slightly manic phase, if there is such a thing as slightly.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. Maybe the same way people say, like, oh my God, I'm so OCD. And then, because things are, like, slightly out of order. You don't seem like it to me.
Yeah, but compared to my regular baseline, that's why I said slightly. But sure. I can notice from my baseline, like, it's harder to fall asleep. And there's, like, extra energy. And the entire day I'm, like, doing something one after the other more than I used to before.
I think I was sort of like, I think that's good, though. I don't know if that's, I don't think that's anything to worry about.
Yeah, basically. I'm not worried about it, but I'm just thinking maybe in some other people, if the amplitude is like higher, then they become like more bipolar, like manic depressive.
Yeah, that, you know what, I think that that's true. Like, there's sort of a stable range, and for some people it's higher or lower. Yeah. And I feel like I mean, you know, obviously I don't know shit about psychiatry or psychology, but like, I do feel like, yeah, like that's why maybe acid is like less of a safe option than shrooms. Like, I feel like shrooms sort of doesn't like fuck with your energy as much. Like, acid really amps you up to a degree that maybe some people can't handle. Yeah. But I mean, for me, I was smoking weed, and it was like, it was enough to sort of teeter me off the edge. I think I just like am not a stable person mentally.
Yeah.
It's the stuff that,
and the instability was changing like by the minute, by the hour, by the day, like the state of your mind, what you believed, how you felt.
When it first started, it was like a slow build. And it got, you know, weirder and weirder. You know, it was sort of so slow that I didn't really notice it until I was already like acting weird, and my friends were like, "We're kind of worried about you. Like, you've been acting differently lately." I will say, one of the reasons I feel like you shouldn't worry about being manic, and I shouldn't either, is like, I was incapable of listening to people when I was manic. Mm-hmm. Like, pre or post acid, like, I was just completely like, no one could get a word in edgewise. And I'm a talkative person already, but it was like to an extreme degree, where just like anything I could think of, it was like I had to say it. And it was, you know, that was something. But yeah, acid's cool. As someone who had his mind severely affected negatively by weed, and severely affected negatively by acid and weed are both cool. Legalize them.
Really?
Mushrooms are cool. I had a bad time on mushrooms, but they're still fine. Like, I didn't have an episode because of mushrooms.
So if you just legalize them, other people could fall into the same trap, no?
Yeah, but I feel like the price, you know, the price trade-off. Yeah, like the number of people, especially like black men who are in prison for weed, like, is insane. Yeah. I mean, you know, most incarcerated people on the planet in this country, blah blah blah. I mean, you know, this is everybody knows about this, or, you know, anybody who would be listening to something about psychedelics would know about this. But yeah, like, obviously, you know, the sort of second wave slavery of the United States is powered by drug prohibition. And
we can find out more about which people are negatively affected by which of the psychedelics and how.
Yeah.
And we can have advisories just like there is with like anything else.
I should say, like, I think decriminalization is better. Like, I do think that, you know, I think everything should be decriminalized. I think there's debate about whether or not, like, they shouldn't be selling heroin at Walgreens, I think. But, like, I think they should be selling, like, weed and mushrooms at H-E-B. But, like, acid, maybe not. Maybe that's not for everybody, you know. DMT, maybe not for everybody. But I feel like, you know, why make someone a criminal because they decided to hurt themselves? You know what I mean? Like, nothing I did, which maybe I'm lucky because, you know, I just happen not to be a danger to myself or others, but, like, nothing I did affected anybody physically. You know what I mean? Well, that's not true, my family, but I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about this actually, and I feel like there's an extra component which makes a lot of authorities like kind of shut down drugs, which is that these people together live in a certain world, a mental world where like things are according to certain expectations and norms and whatever, and then you go and bring a really weird, crazy, topsy-turvy reality, and so you might just be doing that by yourself, but people are watching you do it, more and more people are doing it, and so it's like a strange, weird, warpy reality now is starting to threaten yours. And people can be very defensive about their reality, and they're like, no, more and more people are going to do it, we're all just going to go crazy, weirdy, loopy, warpy thing, we don't want that.
Yeah.
You know, this is the reality, that's a hallucination, and we need to stop people doing that.
Yeah, I do I sort of, I guess, have it both ways as far as that goes. I do feel like sometimes, like, that's where a lot of the, like, overly evangelical psychedelic community stuff comes from. I do remember, like, hearing stuff from people that are like, I did acid and I just couldn't, like, relate it to people who hadn't done it, you know what I mean? And, like, I never had that experience. Like, I don't know, have you ever heard that before?
No.
I feel like that was... I used to be, like, obsessed with the Beatles back in the day. And, like, I remember reading, like, George and John... Harrison and Lennon respectively did acid, and they're like, we can't relate to Paul and fucking Ringo anymore, like they have to do it. And I never got that. Like, I never felt like, I don't know, I don't feel like there's much you can get out of psychedelics that you can't get out of, like, yourself, other than, like, being really high and have, like, you know, that's fun and everything. Like, the experiences themselves, yes, like, that's sort of relying on psychedelics, but it's, I don't know, it's almost like a shortcut, maybe. I don't know, I'm sort of talking out of my ass right now. I feel like maybe, like, psychedelic therapy would be less necessary in a world where, like, people were less exploited and, like, you know, like, I don't know, does that make sense? Like, if people were allowed to live their lives, like, I feel like we have these contradictions we have to make peace with that we wouldn't have to otherwise. I don't know. I sort of went stream of consciousness there. I'm not sure I agree with what I said, but it's something along those lines.
No, I kind of do.
Yeah.
I'm getting this sense as you were talking about your previous experiences and what you believed in and things like that, that you... Sometimes I'm getting this feeling like you don't believe the things that you're saying as much as I am believing them.
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. I think I agree with what I'm saying. I have a healthy skepticism. I don't know. I think maybe because, like, pre-doing psychedelics, I was so into, like, Timothy Leary and figures like that, and, like, Abby Hoffman and shit like that, like... Not Abby Hoffman, the Chicago 7 protester, although he's cool too, but Albert Hoffman, the guy who, like, discovered acid and, like, Bicycle Day and all that shit. Like, I was very into it before I did it, and then I sort of did it, and I felt like it didn't ruin my life, but it certainly could have. And I'm just like, I don't know, like, maybe, I think that people have a reverence for psychedelics, which is good, but maybe they don't have, like, the respect for it that they should. You know, it's like driving a car. Like, driving a car... I mean, I'm sort of anti-cars. Maybe this is a bad example. Like, riding a horse. Like, horses will get you somewhere, but, like, they're dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, I think they're great, but, like, you have to understand that, like, you know, you can't fucking have it be the solution to everything, because then, you know, people get trampled. That was a really mixed metaphor. But, yeah. People get run over.
I think sometimes the psychedelics are wise enough to, like, tell you that.
Yeah.
Like, I hope so.
That's
I think
maybe
sometimes
kind of the
psychedelics
shroom experience I had, but yeah, I don't know. I do feel like my final, like, you know, my final answer is, like, I'm glad I did psychedelics. I don't think I'm ever going to do them again.
Yeah.
I remember my mom, well, I should say, I guess maybe this is important to the story. Both my parents, like, do psychedelics and are, like, pro. Or they haven't in a long time. Well, my mom hasn't in a long time. But I remember, like, being on a walk with her and being like, you should do... I was, like, worried I would, like, get addicted to acid or whatever. And she was like, you should do acid, like, once. And I was like, what do you mean once? And she was like, once you do it, like, you'll probably have your fill. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I did it, and she was, like, kind of right in a way.
That was the first time where it didn't work, really? Or...
Well, no, I guess I did it twice, but only once it really worked.
So your mom said you should do acid, and then you did acid, and you had this episode.
Yeah.
So did she feel really guilty about it?
I don't know. I haven't, like, talked to her about it much, but I assume not. Like, I don't think she should. Because I don't know. Because it wasn't really, like, how could she have known? But she's very level-headed, like, and I'm still close to my, like, you know. So I don't think so. And it wasn't like she wasn't like pushing me to do acid. I was just like, I'm thinking about doing acid. And she was like, yeah, you should. It was sort of that.
So your parents have done psychedelics a lot?
Yeah. My dad does a ton. Well, my dad's like a weirdo. But my mom has done them, you know.
So this is what the child of two psychedelic parents is like.
Yeah, I guess
so. There are certain things that are falling into place.
No, my dad is, I don't know, well, without like risk of going on a long tangent, but yeah, like my dad is maybe somebody who's done too many psychedelics, but he's still like, you know, he still functions in society.
I had like a flash, like a vision. I was like, oh, so if I finally find that very psychedelic woman that I want to marry and maybe have a kid, it's going to be like Ian.
You're going to have an Ian who can't do drugs.
Yeah.
You're just going to be jealous of his parents and all the drugs they got to do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, so my roommate wants to become a therapist. And
which one?
Maxine.
Oh, word.
And we were in her car earlier today, and I don't know. I was talking about like manic things. Like we were talking about mania for some reason, and she said, "Hey, have you ever noticed?" or something like that. She was like, "It's always guys."
Yeah, I don't know if that's true.
And I was like, yeah. And I started. I was like, that would be like kind of. Yeah, it's like,
I think by
feels
and
like
large,
social conditioning has a lot to do with it.
Yes,
what she thinks.
I think by and large that's true. I do know like a couple women who I think have had mania, but it's true. Yeah. By and large, like the examples I can think of. Well, you know, the family friend I talked to was a woman, and she had like nearly the exact same symptoms as me.
So she's like,
a gay woman. I don't know, but
I don't know.
It has something to do with being attracted to women. Maybe the women are driving us crazy. No, kidding. Yeah. That is funny. Yeah, I don't know statistically if that's the case, but it certainly feels true. Yeah. That it's mostly guys. Yeah. That's funny.
Thanks for hanging out with Ian and myself today in the Room of Lives. Take care until next time.